please call the roll.
Yes, Mayor J. Max Davis.
Here.
Councilmember Rebecca Williams, District 1.
Here.
Councilmember Jim Meyer, District 2.
Here.
Councilmember Bates Madison, District 3.
Here.
And Councilmember Joe Gebbia, District 4.
He's in the parking.
Okay. Thanks.
All right. Opening remarks. I don't really have any opening remarks for this work session, but we have a library presentation. It'll be 10 minutes, I believe, on the DeKalb County Public Library in Brookhaven.
Hi.
Hi. Thank you for coming.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I've got a little packet here for you. I'm Allison Wessing. I'm the director of DeKalb County Public Library. I've been the director for about 3 years now, but I've worked with the system for 16.
To let you know, my children got their library cards about a month ago and already got books, and we've already started getting calls to return the books.
Okay, well that is awesome
They already
because you owe us some overdue
Yes,
funds,
yes.
and that's how we're financing our book collection. So keep them long. Just don't get $40 or more because then we turn you over to the collection.
Okay.
So we don't look sometimes. We don't want that. So I'm just here to talk to y'all and answer some questions. If you have some about the bond program, you know, we did back in 2005, the DeKalb County voters got $54.5 million. So we voted for that to complete some bond library projects in the county. We're probably about 3/4 of the way through that bond program right now. We've got 2 projects left. We're closing one out right now. It's in Central DeKalb, which is our processing center and administrative center. We'll be done in about a month. And then we're going to get started on our project in Ellenwood down in South DeKalb. Down by the Seminole landfill, and then we've got the Brookhaven project, and that's the Ellenwood is a brand new facility. That's that area of the county's never been served, and the Brookhaven project is a replacement. So similar to some of our other projects like the Scott Candler Library, the Topo Hill Library, North Lake, where we're taking an existing library and either expanding it or tearing it down and replacing it. And in this case, we want to tear it down and replace it. The original building was built in the 1950s. It was renovated in the 60s, and basically has just had minimal maintenance since then. It's outdated, electrical, everything just needs to be wiped away. The idea.
What is budgeted for that?
It's about $3.6 million.
Is that final, or is that just
That's what was that's what was slated. If we can come up with more money, obviously, we would actually like to spend a little bit more, because $3.6 million doesn't get a whole lot of buildings these days.
Right.
But some of our other projects have been about that, and you can get a pretty decent 10 to 12,000 square foot buildings or something like that. And that's what we're looking at, basically turning the current Brookhaven Library from what we call a neighborhood library and turning it into a community-sized library.
Right.
So usually those are at least 8,000 square feet or higher. They have service 6 days a week. They'll have 1, 2, sometimes 3 professional librarians on staff, and they'll do all different kinds of programs and services, book clubs, story times, different kinds of programming, outreach in the community, books for all ages, things like that. The thing with the Brookhaven Library has been a little bit complicated over the years, as y'all know. The folks in Brookhaven seem to have lots of differing opinions on where to put the library, so we've been hearing from folks that say, please put it in the park, keep it where it is, move it over on Dresden, put it at the tag office, all these kinds of things. So we've kind of, as our budget in the last couple of years, our operating budget hasn't been very stable, we've kind of been putting some of these last projects a little bit and kind of put the brakes on them a little bit, because we can't, we've been in the position the last few years where our operating budget really has remained flat, yet we've been offering service from more locations with the same number of people.
What is your opinion on what should happen?
On what should happen?
What do you think is best in your opinion?
I want to do what the community wants. And right now,
if you were in charge,
Are you running for office?
our two main options are, the current site. It has a lot of restrictions, though. It's a 1.18 acre site. 40% of it is unusable because there's a protected stream bed there. The second option, the second best option would be to put it over at Brookhaven Park if we could come up with some kind of arrangement where, the city gives us the land or allows us to long-term lease the land. There is that little corner, the sort of southeast corner of the park, that would be ample space with shared parking with the community, the CAD Community Service Board there. You know, and that site certainly has some good points about it, especially if the city council is interested in then potentially kind of developing that site as some sort of town center idea or something. So really either way, and what I'm here to do today is really to get some input from you or to ask you to help me get input from your citizens to help us make that decision about where.
So you say about 3.6 million. You mentioned, that's, we always want to get more. Is there a way that we can get more?
The way to get more would be if we place the library, if we can come to an agreement where we place the library in the park, the current piece of property that it's on.
So take it off the park, so we can get more money if we're taking it off the late pieces on what you're about to say.
Yes, if we don't build at our existing location and we build in the park,
right.
We could sell the current piece of property. And it's a decent piece of property. We need to have a new appraisal done, but it appraised at a little over $1 million about 5 or 6 years ago.
What is that zone? Does anybody know?
It's an office. Yeah. It's a general. I think it's a general office.
It might be residential. Most of our sites are residential.
They're beyond more.
But I'm not sure.
Okay.
We should look that up.
Is it back up to the little park there? The little
detention pond?
Yeah, whatever that is.
That's Marta
detention pond.
Okay.
Marta owns behind that. So, that would potentially give us, depending on what it's worth today and whether we had a good buyer.
So we could make sure that every bit of that money went to our library. That would be the case?
Yes.
If you sold it?
Yes, I would be working with the DeKalb County Commission, and I've already been in discussions with Commissioner Rader and some of the other commissioners, making sure that all the surplus properties that we've got other surplus properties that they are coming back to our bond.
So that's an advantage to moving.
That's an advantage
sell the
to
property.
moving.
You get maybe $500,000 more money, or $1 million, whatever it is.
What's the square footage on the current?
The current square footage is about 6,800, and then if we were to locate it on the current site, and there's a preliminary, just kind of a sort of quick and dirty sketch on the back of one of these papers that I've given you, that Sizemore Group did for me, where basically, if any of you have been to the Topo Hill Library, it would have to be something like that, where you had kind of the main library on top, some of the mechanical rooms, restrooms, maybe a meeting room down below, and have the library sort of cantilevered out to tuck parking underneath, because the parking would be the problem at that site. There would only be enough room for about 36 parking spots.
Do you have the address for the Topo Hills, or what's the name of the park?
It's by Masonville Park, so I think it's 1282 McConnell Drive.
Okay.
But that's also a cost, sometimes can be a costly design. You have to put in an elevator. Elevators are not cheap. All those little things kind of play in.
Is there any money available from interest on the bond funds that's accrued?
All the bond interest money that's been accruing since I took over the library system has gone into the Brookhaven account. We did have a situation in 2008 and 2009 where bond interest had accrued. That was during, those were the dark years in DeKalb County, and so our book budget was zeroed out from the general fund, and we were required for 2 years in a row to spend bond interest money because we can buy books with the bond interest money, and so we did during that maneuvering, and that was at the tail end of the Vernon Jones administration lost. Certainly we bought books, and everybody in the county benefited from it, but I wish that hadn't happened back then.
What kind of new designs would we be looking at? I mean, obviously because so much is going electronic, there's less of a need for shelf space. I think it's more activity space is what.
Yes, and that's what we're trying to do. And I've been updating the former director, Darryl Wiley, had done the building program, and we're updating it right now. And one of the things that we're doing in there is taking out some of the space, because it was done 7 years ago, taking out some of the book, staff space. That's not to say that there's still going to be more books in this library than there are now, because it's just so tiny. But there's small study rooms, conference room, a larger meeting room, lots more sort of open spaces where people can just kind of lounge, a generous children's area with also seating for children to do their homework, what we call parent-child seating, so small families or moms and their kids or dads and their kids can come in and just sit together to enjoy the library. More computers than they have now, although we're finding as we move forward. Certainly plenty of people still come to us and they need their computer, that we're their only computer access, but also lots of people they have their own laptop or their mobile device and they're coming to us for the free Wi-Fi. And this, if y'all, last month in Brookhaven, we had over 1,000 people log into the computers just at the Brookhaven Library last month. So, and we're circulating now out of that branch, in case y'all aren't regular users. We serve about anywhere between 4,500 and 5,200 items a month out of that branch. And this is on the reduced schedule, so when we go back to the full schedule, it would probably go up by 20 or 30%. And the traffic ranges anywhere between 3,700 visits and about 4,200 visits a month. And what we found in the areas where we have built a new library, and I think the Candler community is a great example, where you had kind of a vintage library built in the 50s, also very kind of very dated, a little, it was ugly. It was ugly. But now we have this very beautiful new building, and and we've been able to expand their hours because they made that jump too from a neighborhood to a community. Their circulation has doubled, and we actually, for that branch, didn't spend we didn't have any money to spend on the books, but it's just the fact that we can display them in a nicer area, in a nicer space. It's just more inviting to people in the community, and they're coming and they're using them. The traffic is probably up about 30%. They've been open for about a year.
Would you envision the city having input on exterior design and maybe an interior space?
We were planning on, because of the overlay district, so that it would apply to whatever.
But I'm talking about like style elements or whatnot.
Sure, yeah. If the community wants a super modern building, if the community wants traditional brick, if it's within the budget, we have tried to make, at least this time around, we have a series of community meetings once it gets to that planning stages, and the architects will come and they'll show like sample exteriors and kind of gauge community interest on those. In the 80s, when we did the bond, we did more cookie cutter libraries, so you go to Flat Shoals, Covington, Clarkston, and it was the same design for each community. Now, I guess we saved money doing that. This time we tried to be a little more individual. So when you go to these different facilities, they look very different.
Allison, I've been to several meetings at the library where you have solicited people to come forward and start having input. Is there a formalized group that's been formed, or is it just you're just getting informal opinions, anecdotal? Have they met?
It's mostly been informal, and then what happened once the incorporation of Brookhaven happened, I sat down with a couple of my trustees, sat down with some folks at the county, and just kind of talked about how can we make this process happen. We don't, I want everybody to be happy, and this is the project. I'll just say that lots of people call me, lots of people express their interest about I want it here, I want it there, I want it there, and we're not going to be able to make everybody happy, but we want to. So to me, it makes sense to come to you all as the elected representatives for this community to help us make that decision.
It seems to me. You just go more.
Yeah, she can go.
Well,
No, ladies first.
It seems to me that libraries over the years have really kind of been repurposed from both the advent of more electronic books and digital media, but instead of just going there to check out your book, they're really community centers. And what I see going on in the beautiful new centers in DeKalb are meetings, senior groups, card playing, lessons, classes, really robust activities. And you had already said you've already been looking at differences in space. Does your planning take all of that into account, or would you agree that we're kind of looking at a new model from the old library?
Yeah, definitely for the space. I mean, we need less space for physical objects and more spaces for people to come together and do things and meet. What a lot of people now, they want that what we call the third place to go to. They go to work, and they go to school, or they go home. But where's that third place in the community where you can just kind of go and hang out and be safe and enjoy your community or enjoy a resource, and that can be the library. You don't have to go to Starbucks or McDonald's and order a cup of coffee. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but you can come to us without having to do that. And so that's what we're, but we've always been that. It's just Now, people, it's all still about books and reading and stories and information. It's just being presented in a different way and in a way that fits people's lifestyle.
I stopped in there last week, actually, and just want to commend your staff. You've got excellent staff. You've got
Jennifer Barzak, she rocks.
Yeah, so well done with that. Regarding the existing building, so this plan looks at just renovating or adding on to, is this just a rough sketch?
This would actually be, this would just be a sketch. This would be tearing it down.
Is there any kind of option for utilizing the existing building and adding on to it?
No. I'm sorry, for the simple fact that it doesn't comply with the overlay and to the extent that we're talking about the renovation.
Well, that's not an overlay district area.
It is. It's just right in the.
It's right on the edge.
Overlay experts.
I'm not sure.
Yeah,
It's on the edge.
I mean, certainly I think that that's an issue that
North Shore Hills
North
and,
Shore
I think the city could look to waive some of those overlays. There's a tremendous interest in
Yeah,
keeping it.
The issue you have at that site is you've got a street on three sides, and you've got a creek in the back, so to provide the parking that they need, that's the reason for the redesign, is we're basically putting parking under the new building.
Right.
You can't turn left into it from Apple Valley, can you?
You have to turn onto Sylvan Circle.
Yeah.
and
You cannot
into
go
it.
left.
You can also
No.
turn into
You can't be on Apple Valley or Red White and go, you can't go left into it.
You can't go left into it. which is-
So
I
you
think
also-
this redesign might, if I remember correctly,
does, it
would
does
It
allow,
does, yeah.
it would create a driveway.
But the crux of my question is, if there is a renovation of the existing site, has there been any study done on utilizing the existing frame to add additional space and what that cost would be, rather than just a complete tear down?
There has to be.
Because you determine it's not economical or feasible to do that.
Not necessarily. I would just say from our experience on some of our other projects, where we added on, like for example, we have the Salem Canola and the Harrison Crossing branches. They were they're exact same design as the Briarcliff Library, if y'all are familiar with that little round branches. We went to extraordinary lengths to save those pieces and add that into a design of the new building. I think probably when all is said and done, it would have been easier to just tear those things down and start over because of the mold issues, and it wasn't.
Sure.
And then you had to
Sure.
tweak so much of the new design to accommodate the bad old design that you lost some opportunities to do
Well,
things.
I know we've got a couple, Mr. Secretary, got an opinion on this, or a question, I'm sure, because he's involved with libraries.
Well, I'm here because I have questions, yes.
You got it.
Actually, I think the existing building area would not ever be satisfactory. There's not enough space there. The area behind it is a floodplain,
Yeah, there's a creek.
and you'd have to fill that in or something, I suppose. And I don't know whether you could fill it on and get it approved for construction. So how could you build this library with the capacity we're talking about? And the square footage, the footprint simply wouldn't fit in that area.
That's when
Well,
you do the
yeah.
cantilever design, so
Yes.
you have like a little, like an area, and then part of the library is suspended, and then there's parking underneath. No, not, it sort of extends out.
Okay, and extend over the existing
Yeah,
parking.
Yeah.
Let's do that.
We got a couple follow-up.
Gotcha.
You have time, one?
Go ahead.
Just follow, just to get a few more bits of information from. So the existing building is how many square feet?
6,800.
6,800, and you're shooting for something 12,000-ish?
Yes,
And the new building proposal that's drawn at the cantilever is at 12,000?
it was at 12,000.
Yeah. And is there any kind of formula for staffing and hours if you get to that bigger space? Because I know there've been some cutbacks with hours.
Yeah, and that's one of the things when we're going through and revising the program, the building program, is that we're taking out service points, because anytime you have a service desk, you gotta have a body there.
Right.
So we're trying to make it, and one of the things that might be interesting for y'all is to go maybe tour the Scott Canberra Library, because that one, similar in size, similar in scope, and we made it with a design so that you just have a single service point right as people are walking in, and from that service desk, you can see everything in the entire library. So you know, for safety's sake, we try to always have at least 3 people in the building. And so we can accommodate a schedule, a Monday through Saturday schedule with 2 nights with 6 people, 6.5. If we do 3 nights, then we need more like 8. If we want to do massive, you know, full-scale programming stuff, we need more than that. But we're kind of, you know, we're good at doing a lot with a little.
But there's no, just follow up on that. So there's no real change about the hours operation.
Well, what the goal would be is when it makes the jump from the neighborhood to the community, that then it's going to increase, and your weekend hours would be added back. The Wednesday night would come later once we, you know, once we get more staffing system-wide, because I got to add back Sundays and Saturdays to other people, and Thursday nights for cater and all kinds of stuff.
Jerry,
Yeah, real quick. Does 3.6 million build this new 12,000 square foot library?
It'll be tricky, but we can probably make it happen. We'll be reusing some, you know, there's certain furnishings and fixtures that we'll be reusing, some shelving, things like, you know, where too much shelving was purchased for one project that we now have. We'll be scraping our accounts from some of our older projects now that have been closed out, and we know that everything is wrapped up, and so if, you know,
Okay, so
every penny that we have.
if it moves over to a park area where the land is less expensive, this is sold.
Where we don't go that free.
Well, land is free, right? Freedom. And where, what do you get for that? You pick up an extra $500,000 to $1 million. Does that go into this? I mean, what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
A half $1
We would
million
make sure
would
that
buy all the furniture and fixtures.
the land was free, we'd make sure that the money you sold would absolutely go to the library.
Sure.
Every kind of deal
Yeah.
with maintenance, guarantee that, so that it doesn't go into the general fund or something.
Oh, yeah.
Like that. Real quick,
Thank you.
we gotta wrap this up real fast, and Jim, you can ask a
I'll come
question.
back if you don't want me to.
Well, what we'd like to do is have maybe a little forum with you, and notice it maybe in a month or a month and a half or so to kind of get this discussion started a little bit better. And I appreciate you coming here and getting this started, and it told me a lot of things I didn't realize. And I'd like to hear from the community about what their opinion is on it for a little bit. And I'm sure Ronnie's got an opinion. Ronnie, I'll give you 20 seconds.
This is a win-win for the whole community. You don't want to spend $100,000 on the old building, just on test. DeKalb is not going to give you a play place, but to have a deck, $3.6 million injected into our park is a start. A community center, walk out on the deck. I would not park cars underneath. I'd have a full basement use for everybody. And you'll get a lot of people once you have the new library there. Will be there for free. A lot of the older people will donate their time there. And if you went to the old location, Marta sells their lot for a 15-story building, you're just going to be in the shadow. So the park is a win-win-win-win-win.
Gotcha.
Thank you.
And I would like to, we have a lot of pinup volunteers in Brookhaven. I really would like to in the future, get some kind of volunteer program, because I know there are a lot of folks who would like to volunteer. And you have a program where we allow citizens to volunteer at the library, is that correct?
There are certain things that can be.
Okay, and Jim,
No,
Ronnie, talk for you.
Is it legal and possible for us to say, raise separate money, maybe have some fundraisers that would go towards,
Help him.
Sure. Yes.
Allison will take anything
more
that I
bells
give
and
her.
whistles? Or-
Yeah, we have, and we have the DeKalb Library Foundation, which is its own separate legal nonprofit entity that raises money on behalf of the library system. We've never done a capital campaign yet, but you know that might be something that you know, money can be given to the foundation and then earmarked for a specific project, and then it's like if the concern is that it gets sucked into something else, that's a way to.
Well, thank you very much, Alan. We really appreciate it. It's been very informative, and we're excited that you came here, and we want to have you come back. And
Okay, it'll be my pleasure
sit
to.
down, we'll have some food for you later. You
Gotta get back to the
gotta
caterer.
go get some overdue books. Bring some
No, you keep
thumbs.
those at home. You keep them
And
at home.
keep the ebooks coming.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
well,
I love
we're
how you're
trying. We're
expanding
trying.
that.
The
Yes.
overdrive is a nice way.
Yeah.
For people who don't know, overdrive, you can download it to your
Oh,
iPad, iPhone,
great.
you can get electronic books and audio.
All right.
And the only thing is you've got to get it read, because when
Yeah.
it disappears all the time. But no fines.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Allison.
very much.
Thank you. Thank you,
All right.
Allison.
All right.
Good to see you.
Thank you.
Yes, she does.
Those are fast.
Yes, she certainly does.
Those are fast.
All right, upcoming agenda items, we have, this is for our next meeting. amendments to Chapter 7. Marie, you want to?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, this is just a text amendment whereby the Chapter 7, which you previously adopted, which creates in the ordinance, it says Technical Board of Appeals. We call that locally here the Construction Board of Appeals. It's the formation and the appointments. We wanted it to be alike to the charter whereby the mayor appoints and council confirms, so that's the only amendment that is in this ordinance for your consideration tonight, and it'll be a first read this evening.
All right, thank you. Any questions on that?
Is that a required change, or is it just to make it consistent with the?
Just trying to make it consistent with the appointments of all the other boards, and then we noticed that this was not in compliance with our charter.
Yeah, to answer your question, I think it is a required change because the charter delineates how they're doing it. Is that correct?
It's correct, Mayor.
All right.
When it was originally came out, it came out as a piece that was driven out of amendments from the cab one, and it was driven out by staff as they called the cab model, and when we found out about it, we changed it.
All right. MARTA bus shelter?
Yes, Richard, we have an agreement allowing the MARTA bus shelters to be located in our right-of-way, and basically we're taking over the easement agreement that DeKalb County had approved.
Yeah, and this is similar, it's kind of parallel to a franchise agreement we have with utility companies for the right to use the right-of-way, and as a part of that, there's actually revenue generated from the advertising dollars that the city is a benefit to by signing this agreement. This is an extension, basically taking over the agreement the county had with MARTA for these bus shelters that will carry us through 2022. So it's just pretty much taking over, allows us to get the revenue that now is going to DeKalb County to come to us.
What sort of revenue?
I don't know that we've have enough information to do the actual value. Probably, you know, we're estimating on the order of 20 to 30,000. I mean, it's not a huge amount, but it is revenue.
I guess more importantly, how much control do we have over bus stop locations once, in other words, for instance, there's improvements along Beaufort Highway, there are pedestrian crossings and trying to get bus stops lined up. Does this give us the flexibility or the ability to begin to work with aligning those better to?
With the stops themselves, I don't believe this does.
We can't create new stops because MARTA is a fixed route system, and everything that they do is predicated on federal highway funds coming to them. So they
control where their stops go?
They control where the stops go because it's a ridership point. However, where stops are and there aren't shelters, we certainly can communicate with them that because of the frequency of riders, we think that would be a good idea. Now, they're going to know better than us how many people are getting on at each stop because they take that census.
And a lot of the other thing to realize too, that a lot of these are within the state routes, which, by that nature itself, we have input into it, but ultimately it's a lot of GDOT's decision. But we still, even though they're on the state routes, we still get the revenue from those shelters.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I found from this under section 3, it says the advertising contractor shall determine the amount of such commission payment. We don't know what that is, do we?
No.
I'd be interested in knowing what it is and what the criteria is, how they establish it. Because they're asking for confirmation on this to continue until December 31st, 2022. I mean, is that an arbitrary decision? Is it, because this is CPS?
I believe the way it works is the commissions are set vary based on the advertising that they're selling, and then that based on that commission, part of it goes to MARTA, part of it comes to, it's split 50-50, I believe, between MARTA and the city. But it's the actual commission itself varies based on location, number of advertisements, and the advertising itself.
Is there any way that the city can help with the part? Are these funds going to go to the improvement of some of these bus shelters?
No, the shelters are actually built and operated by the vendor. It's a third-party vendor that operates it. Yeah, it's an advertising firm that does.
Who's responsible for cleaning them up and maintaining
I was
them?
going to ask the question.
They are.
They are.
They are.
So when you get graffiti on, they're supposed to get on?
They're supposed to get them. They own the shelter. We're just giving them the right to put it inside the city, inside the right.
Who picks up the trash at the trash cans?
They do.
CBS does?
I'm not sure if they do or MARTA does, but they're responsible for, they're supposed to be responsible for that.
Can we get a, I mean, how can we manage that a little bit better? That's,
Yeah.
you know, what kind of-
Yeah, that's exactly.
Okay,
what
we-
I-
Friends of the-
Yeah,
If we are allowing a right of way in there,
and just the maintenance of it.
it would be beneficial to the city to uphold sort of a standard that these are going to be maintained. You know, if we're allowing this access and we're allowing dilapidated bus shelters,
We could take a look at that, the city attorney's office, and have a provision in that agreement for them to have the privilege of using the right-of-way, that if we find that the shelter's in disrepair or that there's litter and debris, that we can give them a notice.
yeah.
And then they have a certain time period to cure that, and if not, then we can go in there and then we take care of it, and then we bill them back for that.
I think that's a great thing.
Councilmember, if I may, what this really is the county's already entered into this agreement. And the agreement was good till 2022, okay? When we took our right of way, we take it subject to the agreements that we're already bound. We're bound by the agreement as it is. What this agreement simply does at this point in time is it transfers the revenue to us.
Right.
In 2022, we're going to have the opportunity to sit there and talk and make other changes that we may want to make in dealing with it. In answer to your question about cleanup, because the private entity is responsible for cleanup, we can go forward with cleanup issues through enforcement actions, through our code enforcement, through trash, through litter, and we can work on it through the court system to work on those kinds of
So we could
things.
cite CBS for that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So, you know, there's the scheme to keep those clean, it will have to go through a quasi-judicial
Okay.
action. Like enforcement.
This is more of a formality.
There's a provision in here that allows us a certain amount of space on these shelters. Is there any idea how much that is, or what sort of?
Well, they have an escape comment in here that says based upon availability.
I understand, but I'm just wondering, has the cab, have you heard anything from the cab as to what they've done with that, or have they done it, has that space been available, I guess?
Not that I'm aware of. I mean, I don't know that they're asking for it. I think the intent would be, in a lot of cases, to maximize advertising revenue is to, you know, it's let them sell it because that maximizes the revenue.
A couple nice Brookhaven PSAs on Peachtree Road would be a great,
If they don't have the space sold, we get to put stuff up on it. If they have the space sold, they're gonna use it for commercial. So that's
For the malt liquor and cigarettes.
rather than the PSA.
Do we know how many bus shelters we currently have in our city footprint?
Not.
will we get a map that shows?
We'd have to get a map. We'd have to almost do a inventory of them ourselves.
Or when they have it?
They should have it.
CBS should, the advertising.
Can we request that from them?
We can.
You know, one of the concerns I've heard also
Yeah,
from Beaufort
can we have
Highway.
CBS in here? But once we get this agreement done, I'll let them have them in the,
We'd like to meet our new partners.
is that okay, Maureen?
Yes, we can get them here.
All right.
Yeah.
One of the biggest concerns I've heard about Beaufort Highway was not having the proper shelter type of bus stop. So, we may be doing a formality here if it's something that's already been accepted by DeKalb County, but do we have any impact? Or how can we impact
Here
getting?
again, it would be an enforcement action. It would be whether the structure meets the criteria, you know, whether it's, you know, so it'd be subject to international public.
I think
Plus they'd have to get a permit.
There is a section in here that's under 2B.
I think what Joe's point is, a lot of the bus stops along Beaufort Highway are just a sign.
It's just a sign.
There's no structure.
No rain shelter.
Yeah, there's no fit, like, we see a lot of other areas, they're building a physical structure that provides a certain level of protection from the elements.
Right, it's under 2B and C.
Right.
And so maybe Rebecca's idea about having them in here, we can talk to them about B and C.
Well, I think that's a good idea because their response may be, you know, the location of the shelters on their part is advertised driven.
Right.
You know, what's the market share and.
Not whether somebody needs shelter.
Exactly.
Yeah.
MARTA's would be, we've got this many riders, so yes, we would like to have a shelter. So, yeah, it would be good to hear from them on what their formula is.
All right. Next item. Again, this is all for the next agenda, the next meeting. The possible deferral of the alcohol.
Right.
Was that on here?
No, number 3.
Three, I'm sorry.
I had mentioned this to you all in an email recently, that resolution will be coming before you for your consideration to create what we're proposing to be called the Brookhaven Government Finance Corporation. This is an entity that will allow the city to enter into long-term lease agreements and not be bound by the 12-month annual restrictions that the elected representing the city would be restricted to. It's also similar, if not identical, to the Georgia Municipal Association Capital Lease Program. Same thing. I mean, this is an entity that can go out and secure loans and financing and get a pretty good rate at it. The difference is with GMA right now, within their finance charges, they have included the fee that they charge. So if we back that fee out, and it's all commingled in the finance charge, but once we could identify what that fee is, we wouldn't have that. And it may be better suited for the city to use their own vehicle to finance projects or to enter into lease agreements versus using the GMA. So it's just another tool to allow you to do that. But its principal purpose is to allow the city to have a means in which to get into a long-term lease agreement to engage themselves there.
All right. I think we all like this idea.
I think it's an excellent idea.
Let me just go through just a little bit
Okay.
before you say you understand what's going on. It'll be a nonprofit. The folks who are on the nonprofit will be the same people as the city council.
Right.
And while the city still cannot go beyond a 12-month period, the nonprofit can. So the nonprofit can sign for the longer-term lease, and then the nonprofit will make the relationship with the city on a 12-month by 12-month period thereafter. They can sign for the long term, and they take the responsibility for ensuring that the city will sign up for the next year.
Right.
Having parallel boards probably will make sure that occurs.
All right. Thank you. All right, number 4.
Number 4 is a second read for your alcohol beverage ordinance, which includes the proposed changes of operating hours. This morning, the mayor hosted, along with Joe Gebbia was present, just a conversation, if you will, with business owners who sell alcohol in their restaurants or other places of business, just to get some input from them. We had a lot of input from citizens, and the mayor reached out to the business community, and we did get some comments. There was some concern about reducing the hours of operation for them. And so it's on your agenda this evening. We did put down, if you'll see in parentheses, possible deferral. We would recommend that you do defer this for a date certain, so that we have more time, especially with the startup of our police department later this summer. We'd like to get some feedback from the chief. He's researching right now in his own personnel, just to find out what our sister cities and just what's going on in the region, hours of operation, and maybe even similar or identical businesses that some of the business owners here own businesses elsewhere. So we'd like to know what their hours of operation are.
You said second reading. We haven't had the first reading. So this is,
Yes.
we did do a first
We did it
reading.
last week. We understand that we can change it.
Before the second.
Right.
Okay.
And just to give some Joe can talk to this too, I told the folks today that I'll communicate with the council what some of the opinions were. There were about 8 or 9 total establishments represented. Unfortunately, a lot of it was dominated by one establishment that wasn't really. We're trying to focus just on alcohol closing time. It kind of veered off a little bit. But one of the good things that we got out of this was, and with the chief here, he was there as well, is that we'd like to hear from our police department after they've had a chance to get up and running, to hear what their opinion on it as well. So, we'll hear from businesses, residents, police, and city staff too. So we kind of talked earlier And if we defer this, which I hope we do, August 20th would be a date where we would have given, possibly the police department will have some time to look into this issue, staff, and maybe another meeting or two with citizens and business on this. Would that be acceptable to you, Chief? Would that be, give you enough time to have done some sort of evaluation?
It'll give us some time. I think the important thing to look at, which was brought up this morning, was there were a number of the establishments that actually aren't complying with the current code right now, which that needs to be cleaned up actually.
Okay, all right. Yeah. So, Joe, if you want to relate some more stuff with you.
Yeah, it was really interesting. The intent was to be transparent,
Right.
bring an opportunity for the business community to share and have input in an ordinance that we were considering. As a byproduct, what we experienced this morning was a couple of things. One is people that were in there had a misconception of what was going on big time. So the rumor mill flew very quickly. That's number one. Number two, and you know, our intents are usually are always very well positioned. But I think a lesson that came out of this is we probably should plan to do these types of meetings before we even bring a first read. We give ample time so if problems come up, we're not put into a corner where we're looked at, where everybody thinks that automatically this is going to be passed as an ordinance this evening. So I think that's a good lesson for council.
Well, the other lesson is this. When you put something on an agenda and you consider it, it generates a lot of interest. So the reason that many people did it is because there was something. So there's a two-edged sword. You can say if you just plan for it, you might get 3 people in a meeting to come plan for alcohol. But when you have something pending, it generates interest. And I understand it was arch criticism, but I see it a different way. In that we wouldn't have had over 100 people there.
Is that his criticism?
Yes, it was.
Well, I think there's some legitimacy.
There's some, but there's also another side to it.
But I agree with what Jay Max is saying, that, until you put it on the agenda, there's no real sense of urgency, and you're not gonna have a whole lot of participation. I guess to take that thought further, I'm wondering if it's possible when we have these future informational forums, or whatever we're gonna call them, that they be open to other council members.
Yes.
So we can hear it firsthand from residents and resident businesses, what their thoughts are, so that we can make our decision based on the same.
No, they will be. I plan to, next time we can have somebody, another, we just didn't want to get into the public meeting thing, that was so next time, we'll have another council member there, and then Joe had also talked about.
Well, but can we do it, is there a format that we can do it where it's not considered a public meeting?
We'd have to give notice that it's a public meeting, because all council members would be present, and the city attorney has to be present. And then you get really more into, more of a decorum where everyone is maybe signing up to speak and,
It's a little harder to get information that way. What it started out was having some of the industry folks, if they wanted to come in the office and meet with me. And then it just got, there was some rumor mill went around and then it ballooned up and.
So here's what happened, Jim. An email goes out Friday afternoon to everybody we have on record for receiving an alcoholic license, tax funds fund, for a meeting on Tuesday morning, the day after a holiday. I mean, that was probably not the best way to handle it. So, but it had to be because tonight was a potential second read. Without any input, conceivably, this could have gone to a vote. So my recommendation tonight at council meetings is that we defer this. Well, I'm not sure the August 20th is a sufficient amount of time, because one of the other comments that came out, I thought that was very constructive from the members of the business community, was that a lot of the issues that are in contention here are going to be enforcement issues. And it's going to take a while for the police force to get out there, assess, begin to approach this situation to resolve it, to see what can be resolved, if anything needs to be done by way of an ordinance. If we start up in July, that gives you basically 30, 45 max, about 45 days max, to be able to do what we're talking about. I'm not sure that's long enough.
Also, Joe, that's just strictly from the operator's perspective. From a resident's perspective, there are other reasons why they might want a shorter closing time. It's not just people who are involved.
Yeah, but some of the closing times that are issued are just enforcement issues right now, from what I understand.
Well, yeah, some of them staying from 5 o'clock in the morning. I'm not sure that our residents, there will be a lot of opinions from residents saying we don't want anybody to stay open that way. That would be forfeit whatever the current law is. So from an industry perspective, for some of the folks who spoke today, yes, they say it's an enforcement issue. I would think that some homeowners and residents would say it's a time issue. So that's, we gotta balance those. And-
Well, I'm all in favor of that, but I think if we give them, we should give the police department sufficient time to
Absolutely.
find out if this really is basically resolved through enforcement. I'm just not sure August 20th is long enough. So,
I would defer to our chief
me
to
too.
tell us, you know, he's pretty well informed on this issue and has wide experience, and I'm sure is doing some research right now on the surrounding. I think they'll be able to tell pretty quickly.
What do you think, Chief? Does that line up?
From the experience part of it itself, it's gonna take us a while. I can't guarantee the time limits on that. But as far as data, picking up crime stats and closing times for other jurisdictions, you know, what happens is a lot of the jurisdictions might close earlier. And then what happens is we just get the overload of those people going to these places.
Right.
where they're already
Right.
problems.
Which is what some of them depend on for their business. So it's
Mr. Mayor, can I suggest, prior to the August 20th deadline, and I don't know what day of the week it was, I was trying to look up my
It's a
batteries.
Tuesday.
It is a Tuesday, it'd be council night.
It's our second one.
How about the council meeting before that, we get an assessment, and then what would be on the table then is the possibility of yet another deferral until such time as we can figure this out.
We could defer again on that day if we want, if we need to.
But I think for the business community, we need to give them proper pre-notification and not be doing it the day of, okay?
Yeah.
I'm happy with that. I think if it's not enough time, well, then we've got a plan in effect.
I
for
think we
addressing
have a
it.
report with just statistics and the information that we collect on it.
And you're covered by it.
That was my understanding, that August 20th would just be a report in a work session, it wouldn't be on the agenda.
Yeah.
I mean, unless you want to make it that it's on the agenda for the 20th.
Well, it's up to these guys to make a motion for however they want to do it.
Well, my preference would be to hear the report, and then we vote on that second read, based on
Well, we could do it just
2
like-
weeks following.
We could do it just like we do, you know, with agenda items here, when we're giving you agenda items that are coming up in the future.
Right.
The chief could report that on the 20th and then say he's ready for it to be on the second Tuesday of September.
Okay, well, the issue that we have an ordinance ready for a second read that's to be deferred. So if we defer it to the 20th, we have an ordinance that's at stake here, and a new motion, probably, Bill, the new motion would have to be to, what, augment, supplement the
Motion,
ordinance?
well, you make a motion to defer to the 20th and set it for the 20th. If you work out other ideas that you may want to present, then on the 20th, you can still make a motion to amend on that day and amend it to wherever you want to be and vote on it. If you find that you can find a consensus on the 20th, at a time certain, or whatever effect that you want it to carry, or whatever purpose you want it to get to, you can change it on that second read with an amendment and vote on it and be through it.
I'd like to have also, in that time period, and we can set something up, a meeting with residents. So we have to publicize that, figure out how to get folks here. Maybe we can offer them donuts. I just can tell it's going to be a harder thing to get folks here on that than it would be for industry people. So I want to hear from them as well.
Yeah, I'd say let's pull that online rather than make people come. It's impossible to get people to
Ideally, I
come
would-
to these things.
proposal we did for the overlay district, which we got good feedback on, which we posted on the website, we sent a press release out, all the media picked it up, showing different formats. The thing that was most popular was just people emailing the comments because they couldn't have a meeting for work schedules.
I still want to have a meeting as well.
Do you want it separate, or do you want a public hearing at the council?
I don't know. What do you think? What do you think, Rebecca?
Well, I would say let's do both. Let's send out, give people the opportunity to email. But if you want to have a public hearing, you know, in advance of when our council meetings, like we've done before, that'd be fine.
Yeah.
Can I clarify, you know, when we first passed this, I thought only people who had a late 4 slot at 4 a.m. closing times, but I obviously was wrong because the closing time now in our ordinance is at 3:55 a.m. And as I understand it, you still get another
In the existing ordinance.
in the existing ordinance, and you still get another half an hour to last call is really 3:55, and then you get another half an hour
To get them to drink.
to get them to finish up, and then really an hour. So
Yeah.
now we're talking about really before people.
4:55, yeah.
455 and places that actually closed. So we had also seen another list of sloughs that came over. Was that?
That was brought up today. There was some guy from Rush was saying that there was a lot of people were getting slept. If they weren't existing, they got slept.
There was, the list we saw included 6, Slacks being one of those. Slacks is closed, obviously, so there were 5. There's 5
They
active.
didn't have enough customers to stay on that week.
Well, you said they didn't know. Anyway, but regardless, but yeah, there was only a total of 6.
Okay.
So what did that allow them to do? Do you know, Bill?
What was the question?
Well,
So a slump.
There was confusion about what the existing ordinance is and what the variance of a
some people
slip.
had late pour only. They could only a few clubs could do late pour if they had a slough. The Capital County.
They were handing them out,
grant.
that's it, like candy.
Well, but there were only 6 officially issued in the city of Brookhaven. But now we hear that everybody stayed open for 4. I mean, I was kind of shocked by that.
So the slump would supersede the ordinance, is
Well,
what they're
that's what I'm
saying?
asking. I thought, I didn't know that everybody had 4 a.m. closing time, which is why.
And those are good questions, and that's part of the data that we need to collect and better understand in combination with.
So legal needs to get us an answer on what the
We'll take
existing situation is.
We'll take a look at the sloughs, you know,
It really-
the reality is that the alcohol is always a privilege, and you're not gonna have a grandfather existence for alcohol. You can't create it by a slough anyway. You may be in a fight about it, but we'll certainly take a look at the sloughs and we'll tell you what we think your position is on it and whether they have any. I don't really, from this perspective at this point in time, don't believe that they have any ability to do anything beyond the end of this year. And in any event, we've taken a policy position previously that if they got licensure under the county in 2013, we took this position in other areas, that people would continue to have that licensure through the end of 2013. So I think that would be a consistent position that you might want to look at, even if in the event that you want to tell them the slope is not effective as to allow them to be on the way. I would believe that there would probably be litigation that would go forward, but I think we would give more information after we do more research.
So the way it would work is that once we pass this, we can impose whatever, if it's a new closing time, and it would be effective immediate or within 30 days or whatever we set it at. Is that how that works?
It would.
And do you happen to know what the closing times are, say, in Dunwoody and Sandy Springs?
And that's something I've asked them to get. I think Atlanta's what?
2:30.
So 1:55 and 2:30, 2 o'clock and 2:30.
No, I think it's 2:30.
It's final, last call is when?
I mean, all I saw was closing. I'm not sure whether that was last call or
I
something.
believe in Sandy Springs is at 2
No,
o'clock.
Last call?
It's when you have to be out.
So their last call is an hour before that, so last call is
I believe the
12:55.
last call is probably 30 minutes.
30.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Dunwoody is like 1 or 2 o'clock as well.
I remember the day it passed on July the 1st, when Mr. Wagner tried to stop it in Superior Court, and at 2 o'clock in the morning, I was with the police department, we hit every one of the bars at 2 o'clock in the morning, they all came out like ants, flying out of the parking lot.
And so it was implemented without any.
It was implemented, and changed the closing times, and it was done.
We hit the first.
Right.
So,
I mean, I just think, I would just encourage us to remember sort of being this island of late closing.
Right.
All the municipalities around us have earlier, but we'll get firm data.
And that is why Sandy Springs changed their closing time, because they had a late closing time, and what they were finding was that everybody from Buckhead and the Buckhead-Roswell Road area was coming straight up Roswell Road, straight into Sandy Springs, to hit the last 2 hours of the bars over there.
And that's what these people cited, that, I mean, the business owners said, that's what we depend on for our business. They were saying,
What they were finding in Sandy Springs, however, is they had been drinking all night over in Buckhead before they got there, and all you had was people who were DUI on the roads to come to Sandy Springs for the late night bars. And that's when they made the decision that they would do it over there.
I I'd have to be convinced that those last 2 hours are vital to the
You're
survival of your business.
You're talking about, I went through the ordinance, you've got 135 hours that you can pour liquor, and we're talking about taking away 11 of those.
Right.
So, you know, and they're saying that that's gonna go, and again, I need to see the statistics, but.
Well, I'll also want to look at special holidays, you know, like I mentioned earlier today about beers and Cinco de Mayo, St. Patrick's Day, and things of that nature. The night before Thanksgiving, one owner told me that's one of the greatest nights. That all the college kids come, and they're going to come home, and the regular folks want to come and drink the night before Thanksgiving. So,
I had no idea.
To deal with the families the next
so
day.
that was something I didn't realize.
And then the events, like Villa Christina.
The events at Villa Christina, they were saying that Art was speaking on behalf of Villa Christina, I believe, said that Villa Christina, sometimes their weddings go a little long, and they want to have the ability to stay open. And then some of the places talk about the Friday and Saturday nights being, they really need those hours, but not during the rest of the week. So we're going to have to hammer something together. It's probably not going to be what we have right now. It's probably not going to be what some of those clubs want, but I think that's what this is about.
See, we already have an hour difference between Friday and Saturday night. It's only during the week, but just before late. Friday night it's
early. Saturday night's early, yeah.
Saturday and Sunday is now early.
Yeah. Okay. So maybe put someone out, and then I'd like some regular folks to come to talk to us about what they're concerned. Because I have met with residents who've come to my office to express concerns about not being able to sleep on a Sunday night for the past 3 years because of the noise and the ruckus going on outside some of the clubs. And so there is it's not all just about revenue and staying open as late as possible to get that last ounce of liquor forward. It's quality of life for our residents and property values as well. So we want to balance those interests of businesses with the interests of citizens and residents and come up with something that we think most people can live with.
I'm sorry, Mayor, are you saying that you want this just for residents and not business owners?
You know, we have one just for business owners. I mean, we could probably open it up to.
I don't know how we can exclude them.
Oh, I mean,
We can try and focus.
It might be good for residents to hear the business owner's perspective.
and vice versa.
And vice versa. You know, I mean, we can mediate, but you have both parties there. And the ones that are there are going to be the ones that are going to be really interested and concerned anyway.
Right. All right. Okay.
So, to conclude,
we can't take a poll.
no, but
What's gonna happen?
I'm going to comment.
Sure.
It's my intent to offer deferral something on this ordinance.
Second.
No, it's not.
No, but
I'm voicing an opinion here right now.
I think that's probably the best thing to do, and I couldn't say it today that was going to happen, but I hope it does that.
Well, I'm going to do that, and I'm going to do it with an August 20th date based upon, we'll talk about this, report from our chief
Right.
and a reassessment on council's part at that moment.
All right. Yeah. Thank you. All right. Regular meeting, so we're going to go to our regular meeting agenda now, correct? Is that right?
We're going down to item G, other business.
Let's skip that. Okay.
Yes, reports and things coming up, they'll be for future agenda items.
All right.
If you recall, we moved forward with advertising the text amendment to the Brookhaven overlay, which included how height is calculated, and that was only pertaining to the Brookhaven overlay. So what we have here this evening on G1 is to follow up on that and to allow that definition to also be included throughout the zoning ordinance for residential zone properties, and Susan Cannon is here to speak to that.
And basically, what we're here for is to ask for authorization to move forward with the text amendment for 3 different points. One is to create a height definition to apply citywide, to increase the single-family height from 35 feet to 40 feet, and to consider deleting the threshold requirement. And the purpose of that is that we're looking for effective implementation and greater service delivery to customers. We are faced with some of the practices that came over from DeKalb County in trying to implement the policy that we have. And we're not finding that the policy we have is congruent with the practice that was in DeKalb County. So we'd like to have an opportunity to analyze that and bring a text amendment forward to you.
Okay.
And just one more point, about 75% of what we're dealing with residentially right now, we're looking at a lot of these issues. So we'd like to find a way to deal with these.
Right.
when you're measuring 40 feet, what are your thoughts, or what have you seen in other cities where that's measured from, or how you determine starting and ending point for that 40-foot dimension?
What I've seen that has been effective is taking the average elevation around all sides of the building and then going to the mean height level between the eaves and ridge of the gable, instead of going from the base threshold to the very top of the roof. And I've seen that to be effective.
So you take into account if it's got a 3-story or almost a 4-story basement on the backside,
Yes.
That limits somewhat the height, so you don't have a tower over. Obviously, in my district, we've got a lot of infill that we've got single-family ranch or single-level ranch next to the tower, next to the, and it's interesting, the last 2 days I've had somebody complaining about not being able to build a house tall enough, and I've had 2 other people complaining about the house next door being too tall. So, we're hearing both sides of that. But so and tell me again, the 40 feet is to where the upper limit is.
Right now, it's from the threshold to the tip, to the very tip top of the roof. Under what we're looking at right now would be the average elevation around all sides of the building to the mean height level between the eaves and ridge of the gable, hill, or gambrel roof, and to coping with the flat roof. We're not going to see many flat roofs. That's what we're looking
What's
at
the
right
net
now.
effect of that? Is that really, based on the current, what's the net effect of that? Is that really, I'm just trying to think through. Is that increasing the height because you're taking the mean?
Well,
let's say it's a sloped plot, so you might be going down 10 feet as an average.
it's a case by case. It depends on what you're looking at. But what I have found over the years is that in dealing with height issues, that has been effective from both the commercial and residential perspective.
Does it reduce the square footage of the second floor?
No.
No.
How did you come up with this?
Just general practice over the years.
Has it been done anywhere else?
Yes.
Where?
Roswell, Alpha. I'm not sure if Canada does that.
Most cities use that formula.
So in your opinion, this does not negatively redefine LCI?
No.
This is residential.
Couldn't that?
Okay.
And this gives us this is a standard of measurement for the entire city. Whereas before, like when I built my house, the problem my experience was one guy came out and inspected was from the threshold, another guy inspected was from the threshold of my old house, and so we had to change our plans. It cost us a few $1,000 because somebody's measurement was arbitrary. So this makes it uniform.
I guess that's another consideration. While I understand there's some frustration with the threshold requirement, it does provide some limitations again for the. If you end up with somebody who decides to put a basement under what was a flat lot, and you end up with a front door that's 10 or 12 feet in the air, they back from the front yard. I've seen that in my neighborhood. And again, you've got single-family ranch with them. So I'm wondering if there's some, is the threshold, have you seen thresholds in other jurisdictions, or is that something, or how have you controlled that relative?
In my 30 years of experience, I've never used threshold.
So there's no ground floor, no control of ground floor elevation relative to the adjoining property?
No, sir, never.
All right. Were there any more of those? You all 3 of those?
It was those 3.
Okay. All right. And then you're up next again, I think, on this schedule of fees.
Right, if you'll remember, when we were considering, and you all were considering the adoption of the fee schedule, and we looked at DeKalb counties, and your directive was better than, meaning less than, or equal to DeKalb County. And I had asked you then if we could come back several months after we had a period of time of collecting and really to take a look at staff time and reviewing, and we found a few things, and Susan's going to share this with you on. Staff time is more involved with the cases that we're getting in. And secondly, we've discovered that there is a lack of fees that were not part of the fee schedule from DeKalb County that we're going to recommend to you that we institute. Right now, with the economy starting to change, activity levels are very high, and I think in last month's report you saw the number of permits that were coming through, and that pace continues, and we expect it to even increase. So staff's time is going to be more and more spread thin, and so we're looking at the future as to how do we account for the costs. And remember, we are principally a vendor-oriented city hall and structure with all of our departments. So, the concern is if there's going to be adjustments then to the contracts and the fees and the requirements of time on the vendor's part. So with that, Susan's been looking at it, and she's got some numbers just to share with you. But bottom line is we'd like to come back with some recommended and suggested fees categories for your consideration.
And not to be repetitive with what you said, Marie, but the time frame for reporting was January 18th until April 18th. So we looked at that point in time. And what we found is that the amount of revenue we collected from permits and plan review processes was about $308,000. About $240,000 of that related to residential permitting alone. What we did find is that we have not been collecting any administrative processing fee on any of those permits or processes. We've not collected any utility encroachment fees. I think Richard said about 30 of those. That takes some man hours going out and doing field inspections and coming back into the office and taking care of those things. We've not been collecting for re-inspections or resubmittal of plans. And there are other items that we may need to look at increasing the fee due to the amount of time that's involved and the man hours involved. When you say one case, you might, it's one case, but that one case may be touched by 8 people. So there's a lot of time involved in it, reviewing, processing, permitting, fielding, going out on site visits, taking care of minutes. A lot of things are involved in one case, so we need to look at cost recovery to make sure that we are providing service cost effectively.
So some permits or some services we're providing, we're not even getting paid for. We're not getting, so like when you said utility encroachment. What is that? Explain what that is.
That is, it's anyone that's going to be doing work inside the city right away, whether it's laying a gas line, a water line, a sewer line, which is, we're dealing with a lot of new sewer taps.
Right.
They have to get a right-of-way encroachment permit, basically permission to work in our right-of-way.
Right. We don't have a fee for that?
We don't have a fee for that. DeKalb County is not at a fee, although they are in the process of considering fees for that. The biggest issue is with the sewer taps and the amount of time required for the trenches, us to inspect the trenches as they backfill them in the roads to make sure they're adequate and they won't fail later on. Now the one caveat with that is, my understanding is with the utility companies, Atlanta Gas Light, AT&T, Georgia Power, because we have a franchise agreements with them, we can't charge them a fee on the utility permit. So any fees we would exclude any of the utility companies. It would be more for the private contractors that are coming in and doing right-of-way encroachment, water taps, sewer taps mainly.
So, but is your time occupied also with the franchise fee companies?
It is, although it's minimal. I mean, you're talking about with my time and my assistant's time, maybe a total of 30 minutes just to process paperwork. It's very limited.
It's the private contractors that are the time consumption.
Especially when we have to go to the field and inspect the work after the fact. So
there's not an inspection fee at this point for?
No, there's not an inspection fee. DeKalb County is not charged one either. The other issue.
Why they wouldn't have it? What's the reason for that?
DeKalb usually does the water and sewer, and they've got the crews on staff.
They do it mostly. Yeah, they just never. I don't know why they didn't. Now they are in the process of considering a fee schedule for utility permits themselves. Although because they don't collect a franchise fee the same way, they can actually charge the utility companies where we won't be able to charge them for a lot of that.
What about neighboring cities? Are you looking into what they're doing?
I know Dunwoody does not charge, but Sandy Springs, I believe, does have a fee schedule.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I understand we're a fee-for-service kind of city, but we still have to be competitive with surrounding jurisdictions. And we, if our fees need to be adjusted to meet current need, that's fine. But at some point, there's an upper limit that we need to respect when it comes to making sure we're competitive with neighboring jurisdictions.
What were you proposing?
We haven't proposed that yet, we will put a comparison chart together for you to see.
Yeah, that would be interesting to see because it looks like the majority of time is not with the private contractors, it's going to be with the franchise company. I'd like to know.
Actually, the other way,
Yeah.
anecdotally, it's the other way around. And mainly, it's these, what's affecting us in Brookhaven specifically is with all this reconstruction of homes, there's a lot of private contractors doing sewer taps in the road, and that's really the most time-consuming thing right now.
What they're finding is 80-year-old sewer taps aren't working anymore, so they're having to go back to the main line, and that requires, before they could just tie on the sewer taps or out in the middle of the front yard somewhere, so they tie it on. A lot of those old taps are failing, and so they have.
And those are being done by private contractors, not by.
So when you do this recommendation to us, I'd also like to see what's going on around it, and not just Dunwoody and Sandy Springs, maybe Roswell, Doraville, Shanley.
We can look at the metro area.
Yeah, let's get a good perspective of what's going on.
Yeah, we'll include what DeKalb County's proposal.
Yeah, well, DeKalb County's probably going to look at us.
Going back to the IGA, we can't charge them a fee, but is there also a level of that they have to replace or repair?
Yes. Yeah, they have to put back in kind.
And do they have? Is there a requirement for them to have private inspectors watching that work, or do they usually have third-party inspectors?
Usually they have third-party inspectors. Our problem generally is not with the public utility companies. They usually do good work following up. It's the private contractors that we're finding are more of an issue, or in the sense DeKalb County Water and Sewer, but there's limitations on what we can do there.
I'll just give you an example that just occurred. It was an all-day project of phone calls between the planning department, community development, and public works, and it was early May. A contractor went out, tapped the line without a permit, had an open cut into the road, and required basically all day of the public works department plus a $1,500 charge that was going to be coming from the subcontractor back to the city, because the builder contractor did not have a tap, cut the road, and required multiple visits on our part to be able to be sure that, one, the plate was down properly, and we ended up putting that plate and putting the asphalt grade up to it so that it would be a smooth transition. Fortunately, we're charging the builder that, and he's agreed to pay that, but that was $1,500 and more than 8 hours of his time, because I was on the phone with him all day long, along with James Bassett. So it was, his department, Susan's department. Susan was aware of it. James Bassett, Raul, Richard, myself, and Carl, and Roadworks. And that was all day long, starting at 7:30 in the morning.
There's no fee for that?
No, had there been a fee for a cut into the utilities, into the right-of-way, we would have known about it. So there could have been more of a proactive approach
It's
to
not
it.
just a fee, it's knowledge of what's going on.
Exactly. The fees are, and let me mention this too, so we're all clear. The fees are not a way for the city to make money. It's a way to recover our costs, because there is a direct cost for city personnel, and most importantly, the vendors that are going out there, because there is a difference in, and Jim is right, on DeKalb County side, those are city and county employees that are going out, because that's their job all day long, 8 hours until they finish for the day.
Right.
When you're involving vendors and subcontractors and three different
Who are the county
departments.
employees working for? What department?
Public Works.
In this case, it's water and sewer.
So why don't water and sewer do it for us?
Well, because it's our right-of-way that is being cut.
Then it was DeKalb right away, so they were looking after it.
But it's DeKalb's water and sewer.
Right, but it's our right-of-way.
It's our right away.
So that's what goes up under the
No,
equipment under it.
but the point is,
All they're interested in making sure that the sewer line is tapped properly and installed properly. As soon as that's done, they're done.
That's right.
Well, shouldn't our water and sewer department still do that?
No.
No.
Their responsibility is looking at a pipe in a hole and saying, that's done right, and then they walk away.
It's our road, it's our responsibility to make sure they backfill the road properly.
Yeah,
Okay.
because if the road fails, we gotta go back out and patch it.
Okay. All right. Interesting. All right, anything else? So you'll get us a proposal back.
With a comparison.
Just a quick question on the overlay. Where were we with that text amendment on the overlay? Is that all
That's been advertised. It goes to the planning commission on June the 5th and then to the council for first reading in June as well.
Do we get to see it before it goes to the planning commission?
Actually, I can send it to you tomorrow.
Yeah, if you could send it
I
all.
don't care what they say, it's good.
All right, sanitation update?
Yes, as you recall, you all agreed to allow us to move forward for solicitation of proposals from the different sanitation companies, and the Bonnie Klein's department handled that for us, and Councilman Gebbia was taking the lead on that. So there was a proposal opening today, and placed before you the tally, if you will, of those vendors that did submit, and what the pricing was. And it's broken out into, we use DeKalb County's level of service, twice a week pickup and once a week pickup.
You'll see it's broken out citywide, there's service level 1 and service level 2, that'd be twice per week and once per week, and then pilot programs, that's 3A and 3B, that'd be twice per week and once per week. We had 4 responses from Republic Services, Waste Pro, Advanced Disposal, and Waste Management. All very, very respectable companies. Very excited to bid. We only got 1 bid from Waste Management, and it was on the pilot program. They had questions. They were told it was done, it was opened publicly, and it was opened up in front of everybody. And they were read at once by Bonnie Klein, finance director. And they were informed that this is not the final determination by price. There'll be an assessment made, as we do with all RFPs, and it'll be, well, I'm going to say, Bonnie, come on down. This is, let you give a little response here on how this is going to be handled from this point forward.
We made it clear at the opening that
Come over.
we emphasized at the opening of the price bids that we'd still be looking at the performance of the proposals. That would be the main key. That it's not just based on price. So we haven't had a chance to do that yet. But in fact, you can see on the waste management, I think we're going to call that a non-responsive bid because they said they didn't have enough information to make a bid with other service levels, even though everybody else did the same bid. So I think we're looking at those top 3 companies, and as council member said, I thought the prices were actually lower than I thought they would be.
So if you multiply those out by
35%
12,
reduction.
12, so 35%.
That's what we estimate.
Now things like the yard waste, unlimited. If I put 100 bags out over the course of the season, they get picked up, or is there?
Well, wait till we review the proposals, just to make sure.
The criteria was to minimally meet, preferably exceed, current DeKalb County waste pickup. Okay, that's the basis for this.
And is this with a standardized card or with as many cans as we put out? You know,
Again, we need to go through
Yeah,
the
I
proposals.
I think most of them are going to have the 95-gallon rolling carts.
One.
We have to read.
One for this rate. We need more.
So we'll get the, so next meeting we'll get the proposal, we'll go through and then we'll get it.
Well, we'll do a committee of probably Richard, me, Brad, and look at all the proposals and kind of grade them.
Do we need to do any city council meeting on that? What about Jim and Joe?
Joe said you gave a committee.
What was the question?
You're gonna get the committee, but they're gonna have a little committee on it.
To review the
Review the
proposals.
proposal.
I've offered my assistance if they wanted, so yes.
Absolutely.
All right, good. All right.
Unless anybody else wants to jump in. So we see that.
Well, we'll come up with some kind of grading grid and make that sort of a document where they can look at that.
We do, I mean, my kids do it.
Lord,
They ride them down there.
that's enterprise, any discussion about an enterprise funds for utilization?
No.
In these
Well, what's in this is franchise fee. And the franchise fee was based upon 3%. My estimates were based upon a dollar value, but the RFP went out as a percent, which is probably fine, because if you have varying levels, depending on what actual service you've accepted. And the way it estimates right now, it looks like about $90,000 to $100,000 franchise fees. And my original statement openly, and to council has been the intent that we use this money and set up a keep Brookhaven beautiful fund. And do things like when Ronnie wants to plant trees along Peach Street, we know we have money to take care of those trees. We want to plant cherry trees up along District 1, fine, you know.
She wants it all over the city.
And the money is to be dispersed evenly between all 4 districts. I mean, that's, you know, just really take it as a total city project. And I thought it was as long as we can meet the criteria of the DeKalb County level of service, that's got to be the cornerstone.
All right, well, y'all get back with us, let us know what's actually in the program. Okay. All right, the executive session.
Are you going to review the regular agenda for a minute?
Oh, yeah, we skipped over that. Why don't we, when we do this, why don't we just make the going over the agenda is after this other stuff? Why is it in that section? It was E, and then we skipped over it.
Well, we talked about a lot of it already.
Okay. Susan, what do we need to go over?
I think that we actually covered it all.
Catch it all?
We did. Remember everything that was on
The
there.
intergovernmental agreements we
That's on the,
Yeah, that's right, we need to talk about that. And then, of course, the consent agenda, which are your minutes, and then the ratification of your court administrator,
oh, yeah.
which is Susan.
Right.
Okay. On the IGAs, right now, I'm waiting to hear back from the county manager's office, and he and I are going to be sitting down probably early next week. He was in a prep meeting today for their board of commissioners meeting, and tomorrow he's tied up with that, but I hope to hear back from him tomorrow.
Any particular IGA from your reference?
Excuse me, the police and Parks and Rec.
All right, real quick, I'm just going to knock this out real fast. Go to page 2 on the regular meeting. Just the 5 sections there. The first one is on the alcohol ordinance, probably in front of that, yeah. The second one is the one read provision ordinance, where we make everything one read rather than we do it twice. Number 3 is the sexual ordinance business, the device shop, second read. And the 4th is the amendment to the Construction Board of Appeals, or the Technical Board of Appeals, to comport with what the requirements are in the charter. We talked about that earlier. And then the Finance Corporation, Marie already went over, just to do releases. All right?
Okay.
Yes.
Move to go to special session.
I'd like Susan to have something real quick.
Just a second, we bring our food.
Oh, yeah, sure.
And then,
We never have to ask that.
Let's adjourn this, then we'll bring the food, and then we'll go into executive.
Right, and then the staff can get their food.
Yes.
There's a few items that we're going to talk, and then when we get to a certain item, there's 2 staff members I need to call back in.
Okay.
So if they can just get their food, and then
Need a motion to close the work session?
I move to close this work session.
Second. Any discussion?
I've asked you not to vote on it.
Don't vote on closing.
The executive session is part of the.
No, we're just closing the work session.
It's part of the work session.
Oh, it is part of the work session?
Yeah, I revoke my.
Rescind.
Jim, you revoke your second?
I rescind my.
All right.